Over the last couple of days, Russia has been hitting Ukraine hard. Two massive drone assaults in as many days have left parts of Ukraine burning and caused issues with the country's cities and infrastructure. Russia is getting bolder with its drone strikes, too bold. Ukraine has been forced to remind Russia that whatever Vladimir Putin's forces can do with their masses of drones, Ukraine can do even better with its precise and lethal long-range weapons. Only it's not drones that Ukraine sent this time. Ukraine has unleashed the Flamingo missile on Russia in a massive revenge strike. That strike comes in the wake of a pair of Russian aerial assaults. On the night of November 11th, Russia sent 119 drones of various types into Ukraine, RBC Ukraine reports. Russia's targets were wide-ranging, covering the contested Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk and Kyiv regions, along with Odessa. The drones were reportedly launched from either Russian territory or the illegally annexed Crimean peninsula, the outlet adds. Ukraine's air defenses weren't as successful at repelling the drones as they would have liked to have been. By 9:30 a.m. on November 11th, 53 of Russia's Shahed and Geran drones had been shot out of the sky. Unfortunately, that was less than half the number that Russia sent, meaning that the other 59 drones touched down in 18 separate locations throughout the country. RBC Ukraine didn't have many details about the scale of the damage caused by these drones, but it added a chilling message. The strike was still ongoing. And by November 12th, Russia had officially doubled up on a devastating attack. On that date, RBC Ukraine reported that Russia carried out a follow-up strike, this time launching 138 Shahed, Gebera, and other types of drones. These drones were accompanied by an Iskander-M ballistic missile, with Russia and Crimea again being the launching points. Ukraine's air defenses were a little more successful this time around as they managed to shoot down 102 of the 138 drones, though this still left 36 that managed to hit 10 locations during the course of the night. Most of the attack was focused on Ukraine's southern region, the outlet says, which is home to critical infrastructure, especially in the Odessa region. Repair shops, administrative buildings, and critical infrastructure were damaged. Russia intensifying its drone strikes like this isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a pattern that has seen Russia launch more drones at Ukraine during 2025 than in any other year of the war. Since October, Chatham House's John Loff reports, most of Russia's aerial assaults have focused on Ukraine's energy infrastructure as Putin attempts to plunge his opponent's cities into darkness as the winter draws near. Loff published his article on November 10th, noting that Russia has launched 9 massed attacks against Ukraine's energy infrastructure since early October. The strikes on November 11th and 12th likely move that number up to 11. Putin is trying to create pressure, as Loff explains. Advancing at a snail's pace on the battlefield, Russia is again dramatically increasing its efforts to win the war ahead of winter by destroying Ukraine's energy infrastructure and increasing the hardship for the population, Loff writes. Its hope is that this psychological pressure will lead to a collapse in popular support for continuing the war. October may have been difficult for Ukraine's energy sector, but the reality is that Putin has relied upon drones as one of Russia's main weapons throughout 2025. On November 4th, Meza revealed that Russia had launched a staggering 44,000 Shahed drones at Ukraine during the first 10 months of the year. That amounts to 4,400 drones per month on average, though the latter half of the year has seen a spike in monthly launches after a more subdued beginning. All told, Russia has launched 303% more drones at Ukraine in 2025 than it did in 2024, which tells us that the country has managed to grease the wheels of its drone manufacturing sector and is now taking full advantage of its ability to overwhelm Ukraine's air defenses. The strikes carried out on November 11th and 12th were just the latest examples of Russia battering Ukraine with its Shahed-type drones. Ukraine wasn't going to take the assault lying down. Wobbled but undefeated, Ukraine emerged from Russia's double blow ready to send an absolute haymaker back in Putin's direction. There would be no licking of wounds or time spent picking targets. Ukraine decided to hit back hard and fast, and it chose the perfect weapon for the job, the Flamingo. This weapon is a cross between a drone and a cruise missile, and it gives Ukraine a level of long-range striking power that it hasn't had at any other point in the war. The International Institute for Strategic Studies says that the Flamingo has a reputed range of about 3,000 kilometers, which amounts to roughly 1,860 miles. That's more than enough range for Ukraine to strike almost any mission-critical piece of infrastructure in Russia, including the country's capital city of Moscow. When the Flamingo touches down on a target, it unleashes up to 2,535 pounds of explosive fury, which is enough to level hardened buildings and certainly capable of causing severe damage to the Russian oil infrastructure that Ukraine has been targeting intently over the last few months. UKR Inform adds that Ukraine's missile drone hybrid, which is built domestically, can also travel at speeds of up to 900 kilometers or nearly 560 miles per hour. These specifications make the missile as dangerous, if not more so, than the Tomahawk missiles that were once rumored to be entering Ukraine. The absence of those missiles may have given Putin hope that Ukraine couldn't strike back against Russia's energy infrastructure attacks. The Flamingo has taken flight, and it's proven Russia's president wrong. On November 13th, the Kyiv Post was among several outlets to report on a devastating Ukrainian revenge strike conducted during the night of November 12th and into the early hours of the following day. Initially, it seemed that the Russian city of Oryol was the main target. The Post says that photographs published by the Nikolaevsky Vanek Telegram channel provided a somewhat cryptic confirmation that Oryol was hit by Flamingo missiles. The eagle in the swamps didn't sleep at night either. It was trying to fight off our Flamingo missiles with a very interesting message, the channel said, along with sharing pictures of what appear to be Flamingo missiles being prepared for launch. It's uncertain how successful those missiles were in the Oryol attack. The Kyiv Post claims that Russia's air defenses attempted to intercept the volley of Flamingo missiles launched at Oryol, and they may have succeeded. The air defenses attempted to intercept, scoring hits strong enough to send large fragments of something blazing through the night sky. That debris was seen crashing into residential courtyards meters away from apartment buildings. So how about that? Russia's common claim that debris from Ukraine's drones and missiles has caused damage may actually be true in this instance. Of course, a Flamingo or two being shot down does not make for a particularly impressive revenge strike. But there was more. Much more. A few hours after reports surfaced regarding the Oryol incident, Ukraine's general staff dropped a bombshell on Telegram. That Russian city was far from the only one that Ukraine targeted on the night of November 12th and into November 13th. That incident was part of a much larger strike. The general staff claims targeted several dozen logistical and military facilities all throughout the Russian mainland and the parts of Ukraine that Russian forces currently occupy. As part of reducing the military, economic, and offensive potential of the Russian aggressor, on the night of November 13th, units of the Defense Forces of Ukraine struck several dozen objects on the territory of the Russian Federation and the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, the General Staff reported on Telegram. It also explained one of the reasons behind the strike, in addition to confirming that the Flamingo was among the many Ukrainian weapons to take flight during the attack on Russia. The Ukrainian Defense Forces continue the systematic fire destruction of objects involved in the provision of the Russian occupation army, the General Staff declared. Strike UAVs, jet drones, and various types of missiles are used for complex strikes. Thus, last night, a number of long-range weapons were launched, including domestic developments such as Flamingos, Bars, and Lyuchi. Oryol was just the tip of the iceberg. Ukraine's Flamingos and drones flew all over Russia as they sought revenge for Putin's attacks on Ukraine's civilians, cities, and energy infrastructure. In its reports on Ukraine's revenge strike, Euromaidan Press provided as full a round as is available on the many Russian targets that found themselves in the Ukrainian firing line. It says that the Ukrainian strikes appear to have started at around 5 p.m. on November 12th with an attack on the border region of Belgorod. Photographs shared by the Supernova Plus Telegram channel appear to showcase the results of that strike, which was conducted using drones. Smoke is seen rising from a facility in the distance in both of these snaps, though it's unclear precisely what Ukraine hit. Whatever it was burning on November 12th. Ukraine's drones must have scored direct hits. Krasnodar Krai seems to have been next on the Ukrainian docket, and Supernova Plus reported on that strike too. This time we have an idea of what Ukraine managed to hit, as the Supernova Plus report suggests that the country took out a power substation in the Russian region that left the settlements of Novokubansk without power. This is Ukraine showing Putin that it can cause as many problems with Russia's energy infrastructure as Russia's Shahid-type drones can cause in Ukraine. Blackouts in Russian cities serve as terrible reminders to the Russian people that their leader has forced them into a nearly 4-year-long war that he'd originally claimed would be over in a matter of days. It isn't over, far from it, and Russia's people are starting to feel the impact of Putin's failure in Ukraine. Ukraine turned its attention to its own territory next, Euromaidan Press reports, as it conducted a strike in the Zaporizhia Oblast. Right now, Russia occupies about 3/4 of Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, including the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant that supplies much of Ukraine with electricity. Ukraine hasn't been able to reclaim Zaporizhia with ground assaults, so it's now allowing its aerial assets to do the fighting for it. This time it was the Xelenova Plus Telegram channel offering proof of the strike, as it shared a pair of videos that appear to show Russia's air defenses in Zaporizhia attempting to react to Ukraine's projectiles. The same channel later confirmed that another piece of infrastructure in Krasnodar Krai was also hit. It shared a video in which a loud drone or missile can clearly be heard flying through the sky. As the sound of the drone fades into the distance, the danger seems to be averted, only for a massive explosion to follow that lights up the sky. Xelenova Plus says that this footage was shot in the Afipsky settlement, which also happens to host a Russian oil refinery. We can likely add one more to the dozens of refinery strikes Ukraine has carried out on Russia since the beginning of 2025. The hits kept on coming throughout the night. Oryol seems to have been hit at around the same time as the Krasnodar Krai strikes. Xelenova Plus also suggests that the Kyiv Post's report of Russian air defenses shooting a Flamingo missile out of the sky may not have been entirely accurate. Either that or Ukraine sent missiles that Russia missed. Whatever the case may be, a photograph shared by the Telegram channel also shows some structural damage done to the Oryol thermal power plant, including a large hole punched into the wall of one of the plant's workshops. Finally, there was Crimea. Occupied by Russia since 2014, when Putin annexed the peninsula as part of his first campaign of aggression against Ukraine, Crimea has become a major target for Ukraine throughout the war that Putin started. The country appears to have capped off its massive revenge strike with an attack on Feodosia, which lies on the eastern coast of Crimea. We don't have many more details about this strike, though it's been reported that powerful blasts were heard throughout the region. Feodosia happens to be home to a sea oil terminal that Ukraine targeted just a few days ago, as you'll discover if you check out our video covering the damaging double blow inflicted by Ukraine and China on Putin earlier in November. Perhaps Ukraine went in for the double-tap finish with its November 12th and 13th strikes in Crimea. We'll have to wait and find out the scale of the damage caused in Feodosia. The Kyiv Post adds that Ukraine may have hit more in Crimea than Euromaidan press suggests. It says that several high-value targets on the peninsula were hit, including a drone storage facility, helicopter parking areas, an air defense radar, and the Morskoy Neftyanoy terminal oil storage facility. In Zaporizhia, the outlet adds, Ukraine appears to have scored a direct hit on an oil depot, along with command posts for the 127th Motor Rifle Division and the 5th Combined Arms Army. We mentioned earlier that Ukraine would pay back Russia's drone hordes with precise lethality. This is exactly what we meant. Thanks to these outlets, we have some idea of the extent of the damage that Ukraine caused, both in Russia and the occupied territories, as part of its revenge strike. The full outcome of the Ukrainian strike is still being analyzed as we create this video, so Ukraine may have been even more successful than we've reported so far. With such a widespread strike on its hands, you might assume that Russia would get vocal. Perhaps its defense ministry might issue claims of having shot down every Ukrainian drone and missile, or it could claim that Ukraine launched a terrorist attack inside Russia, ignoring the fact that the strike comes in response to Russia doing exactly the same thing. But no, there's barely been a murmur out of Russia so far, with the only response coming from the Oryol region that Ukraine targeted with its Flamingo missiles. As the Oryol region came under attack, its governor, Andrei Klitschkov, declared an air raid alert on Telegram and provided the only real Russian response we've seen so far to Ukraine's revenge strike. Enemy attacks on the Oryol region continue. Air defense systems destroyed several targets in the air, with some shrapnel falling on residential areas. Several cars and the windows of balconies in residential buildings and private homes were damaged. There are currently no reports of casualties, the regional governor said. There's no mention of the Oryol thermal power plant here. That shouldn't come as a surprise, given the source and Russia's propensity for pretending that Ukraine's long-range assaults are ineffective. Coming back to the Flamingo missile, there's something important about Ukraine's revenge strike that we've yet to mention. This strike represents the first time that Ukraine has officially confirmed that it's using the Flamingo against Russia. The General Staff's mention of the missile, coupled with the photographs of Flamingos being prepared for launch, tells us that Ukraine is finally ready to fully unleash its domestically made drone hybrid missile on Russia. At least it's officially ready. There have been several rumors before Ukraine's November 12th and 13th strikes that the Flamingo had already been used. For instance, October 10th saw United 24 media claim that Russia had acknowledged the use of Ukrainian Flamingo missiles in strikes on Russian territory. It claimed that several pro-Kremlin Telegram channels had suggested that the Flamingo was used in strikes against several targets inside Russia during September and October. One of those targets may have been a Russian FSB border service building, which United 24 media says may have been hit by a Flamingo in early September. But these rumors didn't amount to official confirmation. Neither did Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Ukraine was using Flamingo missiles. On October 28th, Pravda reported Ukraine's president as stating, "The Flamingo has been used in combat. The Ruta has been used in combat. We are doing everything possible to ensure that this year we can trial not just one or two or three, but make a serious attempt. We are moving towards that. We believe we will succeed. We very much hope so because our repeated uses have shown that effective results are possible. The only thing stopping this from being a full confirmation is the lack of any information regarding targets. Zelensky saying that the missile was in use was important, of course, but there was no evidence to back up his statements. Now, thanks to Ukraine's attack on Oryol, we know for certain that the Flamingo is flying into Russia. And entire flocks of those missiles may start flying soon. Ukraine is now looking to push the Flamingo into mass production, and it may reach that goal by the end of 2025. That's according to a November 4th Euromaidan press article, which quotes Zelensky as claiming that Ukraine is making very good progress on creating its own long-range strike capabilities. We expect mass production by the end of this year, Zelensky added, though he declined to provide any numbers to hint at what mass production means in the context of Ukraine's powerful new weapon. Still, the Flamingo is here, and it looks like it's already doing damage. Unfortunately for Ukraine, there is a caveat to this story that may affect Flamingo production in the immediate term. In its report on Ukraine's revenge strike against Russia, the Kyiv Independent points out that the Flamingo's manufacturer, Firepoint, is embroiled in controversy right now. An investigation has been launched into the company by Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau due to concerns that the company has inflated the value of the components it's using to build the Flamingo, presumably in an attempt to turn a greater profit. There also appear to be question marks raised about the number of these weapons the company has claimed that it will deliver to Ukraine's military. That latter issue will worry Ukraine. If Firepoint can't manufacture the Flamingo at the level it claims, what does it mean for Ukraine's ambitions of sending the missile into mass production? Will Ukraine's long-range strikes be slowed down? Does the country have the ability to get a company other than Firepoint to build the Flamingo? With the corruption probe ongoing, it may be a while before we learn the answers to any of these questions. For now, Ukraine's people won't care. Their country's military has just unleashed Flamingo on Russia as part of a massive series of revenge strikes that show Putin that Russia's drone attacks won't go unanswered. And as the Flamingo grabs all of the headlines, Russia's own missiles are making the news for all of the wrong reasons. Putin thought that his hypersonic missiles were invincible, but Ukraine has figured out a way to take these missiles down without firing a single shot. Find out how Ukraine has flipped the script on Russia's Kinzhal missiles in our video. And remember to subscribe to the Military Show for more coverage of Ukraine's long-range drone strikes against Russia. And thank you as always for watching.